of the most geschmacke times that I spent with Rabbi Wagner was the summer that we were in Budapest, Hungary together. I was the learning director of the Yeshivas Kayitz. Rabbi Wagner brought the Zal to Budapest, Hungary for that summer. As the learning director, I asked Rosh Yeshiva if he can give a shiur once a week to the younger Bochrim. Now, he gave the shiur and was always deepul pulim in the Gemara that they were learning, and I was very aware that the Bochrim really didn't understand what he was saying. So I asked him, Rabbi Wagner, you come in every week, you're giving this shiur, you know that they don't understand, so why are you giving it on such a level? And he said that I'm not their daily teacher. I'm coming in once a week, and I come in with one goal in mind, and that goal is, as the Talmidim soll wissen, as a Sfaran Hecher, a Sfaran Tifer. That the Talmidim that are learning, they think they understand the Gemara at 15. They should walk out of my shiur, I knowingly know that they don't understand, but that they should understand after the shiur that they're so much higher that they can reach and so much deeper that they can get into the Gemara. When I reflect on this story, I feel that really this is the entire essence of his Avodas HaKodesh. Rabbi Wagner pushed himself to set an example that we should all see as a Sfaran Hecher, that we should all see that there's a better, deeper, higher darga that we can reach. You watched him daven, you got inspired. You watched him learn, you got inspired. You watched him interact, you got inspired. He pushed himself above and beyond the average and even above average avoida, so that we, all his Talmidim, should know as a Sfaran Hecher and a Sfaran Tifer. And for that, we have to thank him, Me'oimek HaNefesh.
Every person has to say, Masai Yagiyu, Maisai, Lemaisai, Aveisai, Avraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov. That there's no person who could think, oh, ich hab nicht by that. I'm too small for this, I'm too simple, I'm too young, I'm too unimportant, and no such a thing. Every person is capable of achieving the greatest things. Every person is capable of reaching the highest levels.
I really experienced a love and a life of Torah like I never saw anywhere else. Kol Atzmaisei Temarna is a real thing. That literally be entirely invested with your whole, every limb of your body. The way Wagner ran around Zal and used his hands to teach us sugya. The way when he said a vart, was mechadash something and his hands were flying, you felt like you were going somewhere. A shiur wasn't just a nice vart. It was a full experience, and Wagner his investment was, he was fully there. Kol kulei.
See this, I'm being misbeinen, was because the idea of Alikud is a nikud that's foreign to us. It's far from us. It's aloof from us, and we have to think about it and focus on it, and be misbeinen and contemplate it in order for it to become closer to us, to make more sense to us, to become palatable, to spread out throughout us.
He'll come with the shiur, and the whole entire shiur was dancing. It was dynamic. It was the shiur was alive. It wasn't just a kasha tiritz. The shiur, the kashas were kashas, and the yisaidis, the chakidis were chakidis. And sometimes this will go on for one shiur, two shiur, three, four shiurim that it was koching. I like to say that every time we walked out of a shiur from Wagner, was our drawers were dropped. It was just incredible. You felt like you were by a magician that was standing in front of you and performing an incredible act, an incredible show. The way he had his depth and the way he was kol kuli svaris and kol kuli goyin. There was never a two-way chakira. Every chakira had three ways. There was always more than one way of looking at things. There was always more than two ways of looking at things. And by this he brought clarity, and this he brought a geschmack to everything that was in front of him. When I was in Sherbei Zal, we decided that we're going to start to print our Wagner shiurim on a mass scale. So we started working on a shiurim, we started editing it, and try to make it that it should be able to be printed in the sefer. And Rabbi Wagner really encouraged us to do it, and was really for it. I remember having a conversation with him more recently about it, and I remember he was saying that it no matter what work we did to it, it still needs more work. what he told us was that the reason why he pushed us so much to do it was pushed a beat to give a bacher a kachel l'datera. It means even though that was something that not Lav Dafka was even royal l'tfus yet, but a beat to give a bacher a kachel l'datera, you could just do it more. He sat with us nights. I could say my first Chaim Brickman could say that there was times that we were working on it, and we would email him back and forth. Sometimes it would be at one night. It could be that we sent him an email at 8 p.m. We got an answer at 10 p.m. Then we sent him back a response at 11 p.m. Then we get another 3 responses, one from 1 a.m., 3 a.m., and 4 a.m. That the whole night he was busy on this the share on producing it. His whole entire koch was that there should be a koch l'datera, a bacher should have a koch l'datera.
The shiurim really stuck out in I would say Aryeh Shag Mila Yira. When Rabbi Wagner gave a shir, it was called Atzmaisei Temarna. Literally his entire being was invested in the shir. He was walking, pacing up and down. His voice was not monotone. It was very, very live, very vibrant. And when he got to his vart, when time for the Chiddush, he screamed across Zal. There's a Reb Chaim, there's a Beis HaLevi. It wasn't, he felt like the whole Zal was shaking. Shir was like an experience. You came into a shir, felt like he was taking you on a trip somewhere.
Rabbi Wagner bringing from my class about how all the big machers in 770 are making their donations and they're buying mitzvahs for the year, and Bachrim should be making hachlatas in learning Likutei Sichos. The resolution from the Farbrengen was that everyone should take a chelik of Likutei Sichos to learn and make a Seder Sichos after Seder every night. And Rabbi Wagner also made a hachlata, and he attended the our Shir Beis Mesifta Seder Sichos at least for 4 or 5 months after that. I made a hachlata to learn Chelik Aleph and Beis Likutei Sichos. A couple months later, I decided I could do Gimel and Dalet also for that year. From the next year, Chelik Tezvav, and every year following that. 8 years later, it was in my Shana Rishona, I finished Likutei Sichos. I can trace it all the way back to this show of a Farbrengen that Rabbi Wagner put on for some young, impressionable Bachrim. This is the single biggest accomplishment of my life.
Reuven Chaim, you know what you are? You're the corner of Yiras Shamayim in every Chaim Tzvi, you know what you are? You're the corner of Yiras Shamayim. Levi, I don't even know how to start talking to him. Good question. But you're the corner of Yiras Shamayim in every you know what it means? The corner of Yiras Shamayim.
Stops by me.
Wagner uniquely sticks out that aside for his koch in learning, also he had a tremendous koch in davening. Sitting every day in front of Zal, davening for a very, very long Meshach Zman. Every day was different, but a uniquely long Meshach Zman, something which was very rare to find by Rosh Hashiva. Very, very uncommon. And especially Shabbos davening. Wagner would daven for hours, from when the minyan started till 2:30.
I remember I was in a yeshiva for one Yom Kippur, and I remember when we got to the song Ki Anu Amecha, and then we got to yeah. I remember Wagner was davening, clapping his hands and swaying back and forth on his talus. I remember that seer, that image, and until today I'm a shlichus here, and I talk about it every year. And till today, that niggin and that tefillah by me is something that is very, very meaningful, and I always try to daven with. And it made a very big impression on me.
I can still close my eyes, and I think about this often when I daven. Rabbi Wagner sitting there, covered in his talus, shuckling, swaying, back and forth, and you could see that here was somebody who the whole world didn't exist. Right now it was davening, it was that connection between him and the Eibishter, and that's it there was.
Rabbi Wagner's cure for the Bachrim. Not only on a Shiva level, but even on a very, very gashmistic level, how are the Bachrim How are they feeling? Are they okay b'gashmius? If a Bachar was sick, Rabbi Wagner was very worried.
It was a year or two after I left yeshiva. I had emailed Rabbi Wagner about one of the songs he had written, and we had a little conversation, and at the end, he writes, "Was tut sich bei dir? What's doing by you? How's it going? How are you personally?" And you see, he opened the door, he opened that way for a connection, a conversation, and he still cared about his Bachram even after they left. A few years later, I had actually emailed him and thanked him for the years I spent in yeshiva, and I had asked him if he had any plans to publish the emails that he sent out every week. And he said, "I actually published for my daughter's wedding as a tshura, and I'll find a way to get it to you." And when I opened it up, I saw inside, not only did he send the sefer, but he also, he wrote a personal note inside. It meant so much to me.
The beginning, in the first year, was till the yeshiva got off to an established start. Things got off to a rocky start, and there was a tekufa that there were no dorm counselors. The ones that were there left, and they weren't able to get new ones right away. Rabbi Wagner himself became the dorm counselor. He would come around at night, make sure everybody has what they needed, make sure everybody had negel vaser, and then in the morning to come around to schlep us to Seder.
I remember once in Sherbez, our class was having a bit of a rough time in yeshiva. Sherbez was not enjoying very much. Typical, towards the end of his man, we went to Rabbi Wagner, and he knew what was going on, so he said, "Sure, we'll take care of it. Let's make him a love malka." He sat there with the Bachrim, he sat and spoke. It was very late, it was a Shabbos, a late love malka. I remember him setting the table a little bit himself. He said, "Rabbi Wagner, it's not really your job." He insisted, aside for the connection of Rosh Hashiva, of learning Torah, there's also a connection of Rabbi Wagner being there for the Bachrim and caring for the Bachrim.
It was Purim, and Rabbi Wagner gave out Shalach Manas to all the Bachrim, and inside each Shalach Manas was a personal message based on the Bachar's name. So Wagner took different psukim from Torah based on your name and wrote you a personal note. And I remember being absolutely amazed.
At the end of the year, the first month, so we were going to, a lot of Bachram lived in New York. We were going to New York for whatever it was, for a break for a couple of weeks. We'd go down to the bus station and take a Greyhound bus down to New York. So we wanted a ride. So a couple of us went over to Rabbi Wagner. We asked him, "Could you give us a ride to the bus station?" I think about it now. He was in a yeshiva, he had other things to do. But it seemed like the most natural thing in the world, because he was mamish like a parent in that way, that you need a ride, you ask him, "Can you give us a ride?" So a couple of us packed into his van. But this was perfectly natural for him in the way to just do whatever the Bachram needed in that way. And he really tried to be there for us in every single way.
Yeah, becoming a king because he's doing the act with the this man agrees to come to
It was after Farbrengen, and Rabbi Wagner to me was this big Rosh Hashiva. I was coming from LA, and like I didn't really feel like we ever would really have a connection. And so it was Farbrengen, it was getting late, I was tired, and so I wanted to leave. So I started leaving, and Rabbi Wagner turns to me, and he's like, "Herschel!" Or Hirsch, that's what he would call me. And I'm like, "Oh no, he's going to scream at me, tell me off, something, right?" He says, so I turn and he says, "Hirsch, and I remember your father, and we verbring him, and he starts talking to me about my father, and it was a quick encounter, but right then I felt amazing. I felt picked up. I was a little kid, unnoticed, and here the big Rosh Hashiva noticed me, and from then on we were very close, and he became my personal mashpia shortly thereafter. And from when I was 17, I would ask Rabbi Wagner all the big decisions in my life. He played an enormous impression on my life. No matter where I was, if I was going through struggles emotionally, spiritually, whatever it was, I always knew that Rabbi Wagner was there, would always be ready to listen, would always be ready to hear me out, would always have great counsel, could always answer.
Very uniquely, Rabbi Wagner didn't only have a kesher with the Bachrim that were very, very learned, or very invested in learning.
his main nekuda was, if I may say, his personal connection that he had with every bacher. With every single bacher, he looked to have that personal connection. With some bachrim was through his shir, with some bachrim was through his limud Torah, and with some bachrim was through his farbrengens, and some it was just going over to them and saying a vort. It was incredible to have that personal relationship with him, that personal connection with him. We found that we were able to ask him anything and speak to him about anything. I remember that for every Wagner's Yom Haledes, he would come in and give him a personalized birthday cake, a little homemade birthday cake, chocolate cake, special for his Yom Haledes. It showed on so much more than just a Rosh Yeshiva that's coming to give a shir. He clocks in and clocks out, but rather by him he was fully invested in the Bachrim. He fully cared about the Bachrim.
But Wagner didn't sleep. There were times, I remember he had Bachrim that he would learn with on a daily basis. Some Bachrim, a personal connection. He would go, he would talk to them, he would learn with them, and he would have a personal chavrusa, one-on-one, once a week, twice a week, 3 times a week. And sometimes, if there was no time to add another bacher, he'd find time to add another bacher. There was one bacher that he had a chavrusa with this bacher, 4:30 a.m. Thursday night, after he finished learning, and after he finished typing his shiurim and making his shiurim, and after he finished giving a shir down south or to Balabatim up north, whatever it was, he would then sit down with a bacher and learn with one bacher, one-on-one. There were times that he went out of town or a bacher went out of town, and he would make sure to find a way, find a time, figure out how to learn with this bacher on the time that he's supposed to learn with this bacher, even though the time zones were 6, 7, 8 hours different.
The very last day of yeshiva, Shir Beizal, it was the next day. We had an early morning bus to go into New York. And we wanted to have a big farbrengen the last day, right? A farewell farbrengen. Rabbi Wagner did not want to farbrengen for us. He wanted to have nothing of it. It was not a special game of the Pager or a special day. And he wasn't going to farbrengen. So I don't know what time it was, probably 11, maybe even midnight. We decided we're going to go to his house and make sure he comes back to farbrengen. So we go to his house, and he answers, and he says no, he's not farbrengen. So after some time, he tells us, listen, I'm not going to farbrengen, but if you want, we can always learn. I have to learn now. Let's learn. So we pull out some gemaras and we start learning. Anyways, after some time, of course, the learning lightens up his mood, and he starts sharing stories. Anyways, long story short, the word gets out. Within an hour, it's a huge farbrengen. The farbrengen lasts the whole night, and now already it's 5 a.m. or whatever time it was, and we had to go catch our bus. It was leaving in an hour. So we had to stop the farbrengen. We quickly run to the mikveh, gather our stuff together, and wait outside our dorm for the bus or the van, whatever it was. And who's there to say goodbye and bid us farewell? Rabbi Wagner. And to me, this is the perfect story.